welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a knitting pet peeves video. I think this some of these can apply for just fiber arts in general, but without any further ado, I'm going to start. I have my computer over here, so if I keep looking here, it's because I have the list. And I have my knitting also with me, so I might be looking down a lot through this video. Right now I'm knitting the Dagmar jacket. This is the first petite knit garment pattern that I've made, so this is what it's looking like right now. I just have a little bit left of this sleeve. I'm trying to finish it today and block it because it looks a little bit interesting on right now since the cables are all stiff. So I'm hoping that blocking will make it flow a little bit better and be just slightly less boxy and a bit more drapey, which is what we're looking for. Okay, so the first pet peeve that I have is when I don't know the airport knitting rules. And I usually don't have a problem traveling with my knitting needles, but I always travel with them. So I basically rely on the fact that I am usually able to take them with me. When some situation happens where they get called in by security or a security checks them, which happens quite often, they usually just let it pass and they don't really have a problem with it. But I have had some situations where I've had certain needles taken away and sometimes the whole kit, which that's kind of hard because that's pretty much all I do on the plane or just while traveling in general is knit. And sometimes you don't know when you'll be able to replace that. So I can't really give advice on how to avoid that situation. There's some people on Reddit that have a list of places that they've had issues with. Generally in the US, I think it's expressly permitted. There's a list of countries where it's expressly permitted, like the Scandinavian countries. I think Japan is one of them too. The US is one, but there's also a list of countries where it's expressly prohibited. So you would have to look up that list, but other ones, they don't really have a specific rule where you can or can't. I think it just comes down to who's scanning the bag. So just do your research in advance. All right, number 2 is yarn that splits. This usually happens to me when I'm using, I don't know, silk or linen, cotton, but stuff with multiple plies usually does it. I think that's what it's called, right? When the yarn has all the mini strings, and sometimes they have 10 when I'm using cotton or something like that. And I have to constantly be looking, and usually it's just stockinette stitch, so I want to be able to not look, but I still have to keep it vigilant, So in that situation, I am usually looking at my project to make sure I didn't pick up one little strand of the whole yarn and drop the rest of them. It's happened a lot. It happens a lot actually. So that's something that kind of upsets me sometimes. Okay, next is specific to this project and some other projects that I've done is cables that hurt. I feel like this one is a little bit more okay. This is a size 7 US and 4.5 millimeter international needle, and using this is just a little bit too thick for me for my preferences, because I usually use thinner needles. I think between maybe 2.5 millimeter and 3 millimeter is my preference, so US 3 and 4. That is my preference. And usually with yarn like this that is not superwash wool, it's just regular wool, it tends to not have give, so over time it starts hurting my hand, or sometimes even instantaneously. So in that case I have to take a break and continue on. But this usually only happens when I'm doing cables, and sometimes really thick cables, because it can be really tight to get in the crevices or in the, what do you call it, the stitch. All right, next one is weaving in ends, and this one, I know some people like it, some people don't like it. I don't like it just because when I'm finished with a project, I want to be done, If I could skip the blocking step, I would. Blocking, I mean, I enjoy the result from blocking, but usually my blocking takes a day or two to dry. So yeah, when I'm done, I want to be done. And usually with those super stranded color work projects that are using 17 different colors of yarn, like the Starmore patterns, those ones take hours to weave in the ends. I mean, just such a long time. And it's one of those things where I want to make it look nice and finished, so I don't want to rush and have them all like going zigzagged. I want to do it nicely, so that also takes a good deal of time. Sometimes I think it would have been just faster to knit something else in that time, but I mean, you have to do what makes your thing look nice for you. So all right, the next one is figuring out Kitchener stitch. I think I got it down now, but before I would have to look up a YouTube video every single time I did it, and like grafting, stuff like that. I don't know why, I just don't remember it. So I have to keep looking back to see which way like the stitch goes in first, like how to start it is definitely where I get tripped up on sometimes. Okay, so the next one is traveling with yarn and a skein. Honestly, sometimes I forget about the fact that I can't just use it in a skein, I need to wind it. And this happens usually when I buy yarn while I'm traveling and I end up having to use it, and I forget to ask the store employee if they can wind it for me. Sometimes they can't because they don't have a ball winder. So in that situation, I have to like do the weird by myself, figuring out how to wind it, and it usually takes a long time and it gets messy, let me tell you. So that is a little bit troublesome sometimes. There's not much else to say about that. If you know, you know. Okay, the next one is picking up too many stitches for the button band. I know we've all done this, okay? We've all been there. Sometimes, especially when you're not looking at a pattern, it can be hard to figure out what amount of stitches you want to pick up. And I've had to unravel many a button band, and they take a long time to knit because you're going around the whole thing usually. So that is something. Also, like when you have an uneven amount on one side and then it doesn't line up with the other side to where you put the button. You know what I'm talking about? That's something that I always get nervous doing that. Okay, here's something that I know a lot of people will do. I don't really mind that other people do it at all. I mean, whatever works for you. Just personally, I don't like knitting more than one project at a time. And for me, I just like to be focused on one thing and not have so many project bags and half knitted things lying around everywhere. I feel like doing one project keeps me accountable to finish that project. I don't develop second sleeve syndrome or anything because I just want to finish that thing. And also, I feel like when I stop doing a project and I start something else, I kind of forget the crucial pieces of information that I needed to replicate, like a sleeve, for example, to do it again, or where I was at. So I feel like if I were to come back to it, I would have to spend a lot of time just figuring out where to pick back up on that project. And sometimes it can take a year for me to get back to it, so I honestly only knit one project at a time. But I think I'm in the minority of people. I think a lot of people just have a lot of projects running at one time, which is fine. Okay. Next is yarn that tangles around my headphones. I'm not like up to date like most people. I still use the wire headphones from Apple and plug them in. I don't have AirPods. So, or even with charging cords that are just like when you just throw everything in the bag and it gets all tangled up in there and you have to like sit there and just detangle stuff. That is annoying. Okay. Next one is yokes that are too deep. Personally, I don't like the way that they feel because I feel like I can't move my arm up without all the shoulder piece coming up too. And it's like such a weird motion. That one sweater that I was making with the House of Cards themed, I had to unravel, I kid you not, the entire thing. I already had 1.5 sleeves done and the whole body was done. I had to go back and unravel everything up until the yoke just because the sleeves were too deep and I knew it was going to bother me, and I'm like, well, there's no time like now to unravel this. So I unraveled everything just to get the sleeves to be a little bit higher up in the yoke. I think it was worth doing. I mean, it's a lot more comfortable now. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of that. Even for this jacket, the yoke was supposed to come down lower, and so the armhole depth would have been like around here, I think. I didn't follow that. I made it come up higher because I wanted to be able to move my arm without the shoulder piece moving. So that's just my take on that. All right. Okay. Too much scrap yarn that I can't return. I don't really go to physical, I mean, well, since I'm traveling all the time, I don't have a yarn store that I repeatedly go back to because I can't, it's really far away. So I'm usually left with a skein, maybe 2 skeins of yarn that I didn't even end up using. It's just like completely untouched and just sitting on my shelf of yarn. And I can't return it. And I know some stores have this policy where if you don't use something and like maybe within a specific time frame or maybe just in any time frame, you can go and return that skein. That is such an awesome policy. Like, I absolutely love that. I wish I could do that, but unfortunately I can't do that. So I have all the yarn just sitting on the shelf and waiting for another project, I guess. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what to do with just a single skein or when you don't have enough for something. And also, they're all like mixed match yarns. I mean, I have silk, I have linen, I have merino, cotton, and I can't combine them all because they're different weights, fiber content and stuff like that. So I did have a period of time where I wasn't buying yarn this year. Obviously that changed when I traveled because I needed physical yarn when I ran out. But I made a ton of scrap yarn projects, which actually is very satisfying. I'm gonna be honest, I love the feeling of making something from stash. So that's kind of nice, but I also do wish that a lot of the extra ones I could return back because sometimes I just like don't see me making anything else with them, especially if it's like not enough. All right. Okay, here's another one. It's when people tell me to sell my knitting or that I should make like this specific thing, like a sweater for my dog. I get that a lot actually. And I know people think that it's a compliment, like, oh, your knitting is so good. I actually made a whole video on this on my channel of why I don't sell my knitting. And I just don't feel like explaining it every single time because unless you do some sort of craft or even knitting or crochet in general, you know how long it takes to make something. So you don't always have to give that away. I mean, if you want to, you can give it away, but if I spent so much time on something, I kind of want to keep that object. So I don't ever see myself giving away these heirloom pieces. And also, when they tell me what to make, I probably won't make it. I have a very specific style, and I know like a lot of people have told me to make a sweater for my dog. I just don't really see why I would do that. I don't know. I just like don't find an interest in doing that, so I'm not doing that. Anyways, so the next thing is when patterns have 3 strands of yarn held together. Okay. 2 strands of yarn held together is also a lot, I'm not gonna lie, because you have to go and buy a sweater quantity of yarn in like 3 times or 2 times. That gets expensive, and usually it's expensive yarn that's that thin. So you could be spending over $300 making a garment. And I don't really like spending that much money on just like one piece. So in my opinion, I think that I would have just substituted it for something else. But it is hard because I do like using the recommended yarn. That is my thing. I love using the recommended yarn. It's also a good way for me to learn about new yarn brands that I wouldn't have probably picked up anyways. So I wish I didn't have to feel the need to do that. But I don't have to do that. I can buy a substitute. Okay. Next is collapsing yarn that is tangled. So I don't pull my yarn from the middle. I pull it from the end and just like it keeps going. But a lot of the more flimsy yarn, and I'm thinking of like silk or linen, cotton, when you get towards the end, it's really loose and it collapses and just tangles itself. A lot of times, if you're staying in one place, it's less likely to happen. But if you're putting in a bag and moving with it, it's way more likely to happen. So towards the end, it can get kind of tricky to continue with the project. Okay, next is yarns in the same dye lot having a different color. I don't even know how this happens. Like, I genuinely don't know. I mean, I do know. I do know how that happens. It's naturally dyed, so it's bound to happen, but it's just so devastating when it happens because you went through that effort to make sure it was the same dye lot and it looks different. And there's really nothing you can do about it. It's really heartbreaking to work on something for so long and then, oh, different dye lot, which is not like a super big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it's just one of those things that kind of slightly bothers me when I see a different color on something that I made when it's supposed to be the same color, you know? Okay, next is when my needles untwist. Actually, this is the last one, so if you made it to the end, congratulations. So needles that untwist bother me, and I use chai glue, so you can untwist and twist them back on. And there's also a little thing, like a small stick that you can put to twist them even more so it doesn't unscrew itself. But I feel like these get loose quite often, and then the yarn stitch gets trapped between the screw part and the needle, which is frustrating, and it happens very, very often. But I would so much rather work with interchangeable needles because I feel like you have a lot more options that way than just having set needles. Also, they are less likely to be taken away at the airport because you can unscrew them and like put them in the case and it's short. So in that case, I'm not gonna give them up. It's just something that I wish didn't happen. I don't know if other people have thought of that before. I know my mom and I talk about it a lot, but if you guys have that issue and you think about it a lot too, let me know. I want to know that other people are thinking about this too. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching my video. I know it's been like such a long time since I've actually posted something that wasn't a short, but I had a really good time coming up with this list. It felt very cathartic. I even talked to my friend Lucia about it, so shout out to her. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye!